Welcome back, ladies and gents, and thank you so much for joining us. Well, we're down to the last bits of this old 89 Softail. We're at a point that hopefully we might be able to fire this bike off in this episode, but we're just going to have to wait and see. We still got quite a bit of work to do to it to get to that point, so let's get busy. So the only major thing we really got to do on this bike is just to get these pipes on. Now, putting pipes on itself really isn't that big of a deal, but we do have some fresh pipes here, just your standard run-of-the-mill drag pipe slash cut. Now, there is a very specific reason why we went with these pipes, and you can probably guess it. They were about $115 from Lowbrow Customs, so that's what's going on. Now, if you're a performance-minded person, you're probably going to want to spend a little bit more money. But we are not going for extreme performance. We just want to get this bike back on the road. Now, for heat shields, I don't have anything really heat shield-wise. There were heat shields that came off the bike that I'm sure they'll fit, but they're just in really bad shape. So what we're going to do, one of my things I always do, go to Scamazon and get you some cheap pipe wrap. So that's what's going to go on it. So we're going to start on that first, probably just wrap down to about here-ish. That's where the mounts are. So you just have a little bit of the chrome tip exposed, and I think it's going to give it a pretty good look. All right, first thing on this pipe wrap, gloves. You can see I'm wearing them. I never wear gloves, and I've also got on long sleeves. This stuff right here is pretty nasty. It will tear you up, so this is the one time you'll see me wearing it. I've done it without gloves before, and it was a pretty rough evening. What I'm going to do is we're going to start down here on the exhaust end opening. We're going to work from down here all the way up to where it goes to the head. So I'm going to take our wrap here. And what I'm doing, I mentioned this earlier, but you can see there's a mount right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bump it up against that. And getting it started can sometimes be a little tricky. So I think what I'll do, you have to kind of get it sort of going at an angle. All right, I think that's a good starting point. Now, these come with these clips like this, or they're like metal zip ties, and they work. For me, what I like to do, if I can get this goofy thing started, there, I think that'll work. Hose clamps. And I actually took these off the heat shields off of the other pipes we pulled off the bike. So you can repurpose those. Make sure you get your orientation right. This is probably going to cause my gloves to rip, which means my hands will feel like crap later. And see if I can get it started. Oh, I think I got it. That's good. Now the hose clamps, the reason I use these is these things get it on there rock freaking solid. And you can always modify them, you know, once you get it on the bike. If you need to like move this down, move it up, do whatever, you can get to it. But make sure when you put them on that you're letting enough overhang that the clamp is actually going to do its job. And you've also got to think about orientation on the bike. So I don't want this part to hang down. So this is the, you know, this would be the outside of the pipe. So I want to kind of move it up. But of course, I can always fix that later. That's not a big deal. You can just loosen it and twist it. So see, just like that, we got it started. Now there'll be a bunch of little pieces that come off. You can trim those off and all that good stuff. So that's now ready. So what we'll do is we'll take this to the other end of the garage and we'll work our way up. Now for the other end, you can take this and you can attach it to a railing, you can attach it to a garage pole, basement pole, whatever. What I like to do is just stick it in my vise because it's handy and it's easy and it's nice and rock solid. And then you have something you can pull on to keep this wrap tight. And that's all you do, just wrap it up. So I know this probably doesn't show up very good, but the key here really is just to keep it tight. As you can see, I'm pulling on it and it's over there on the other side of the garage attached to the vise. And all I'm going to do is just start slowly rolling it and just work my way up towards the end. Just take your time on it. And if you mess up, the cool thing is if you mess up, you can always just unroll it again and start over. Now, as far as your overlap goes, you know, how far you should overlap onto the previous, you know, wrap that you did. I think it's usually like 1/4 of an inch. Some of the better, I call them high-end wraps, actually have kind of a line, a marker line in there. Honestly, I just overlap it quite a bit, usually about half of the wrap. The reason is this stuff's dirt cheap. It's going to last, and there's just no sense, in my opinion, in doing that. That's just how I do it. And then also, watch here on these curves when you get to them, these bends, this is where you're really going to have to do some overlapping. Because if you don't, you'll end up with some exposed pipe here on the corners. But again, you mess up, just undo it, start over. It's not a big deal. That's the beauty of it. So we're now at the end. So what I did is I used a zip tie. If I can get to the end of the zip tie, just kind of hold this in place. I probably have too much wrap, so we'll just figure out here real quick what we need to trim. Boy, this thing's gonna go flying. Yep. So what I'm gonna do, now this is where you gotta really kind of think about your install of your pipes. And what I mean by that is that you gotta make sure that this is going to be able to move to get it onto the heads good enough. You can see I've got another zip tie here just to keep that in place. Technically, I could have put that on after, but I think I've got more than enough wrap than I need. Make sure I'm sure on that before I start cutting. Yeah, I think that'll work. Ready or not, it's going to get cut. And you know, there's really not a, I mean, there's a right and wrong way, I guess, to install this stuff. But you know what? You just do it the way it works for you. All it is wrap. It's literally just something sitting on the exhaust. So it's not critical. Let's put it that way. Now here's where you got to kind of think about the orientation of it. This is where you're going to get in trouble, and this happens to me all the time because you just don't know. When you go to mount these, you want to make sure that this head, this end of this clamp right here is not in the way of these. If it is, just, you know, take this, loosen it, spin it, you'll be fine. It's not a big deal. That shouldn't be, oh no, the screw came out of the clamp. That's not what I wanted. Oh, these clamps are old though. I sure hope they work. Is it gonna work? Yes, it's working. Okay. There, so now we're on, pretty tight. I might do a little adjustment on that later on, but for the most part, that's done. So we'll get started on the next one. Do this one more time. That really wasn't all that bad, and honestly, it doesn't really take all that long. The biggest pain in the butt doing this is just dealing with all the fiberglass getting on your hand. That's really, if you can avoid that, it's really a pretty easy job. Now, I know some of you'll say, why in the world did you wrap perfectly good chrome pipes? That's a great question. Well, first of all, I personally just don't care. It doesn't bother me. But if you look at these pipes and get up close to them, they're just not that great. They're not great quality. That's why they're so cheap, right? And that's why I think they make a perfectly good candidate to wrap them. But when you think about it all in, we're looking at what, $115 for the pipes, I think $15 for the wrap from Scamazon, so $130 for a brand new set of some pretty cool looking pipes. You really can't beat that. Now, one thing to add, when you mount these up, they are going to smoke, and what I mean is that the wrap itself is going to smoke for quite a while. I guess it's I don't know if you call it curing, it's got a set, whatever. Just let it do its thing. It's not a big deal. It'll smoke quite a bit, so when you fire it up, you might want to get your bike out of your garage if it's in a garage. I've actually had these suckers smoke for a couple of weeks, meaning I rode them one weekend, they smoked all day, they kind of stopped, and honestly, I got on them the next weekend and they were still there. So if it's doing it, just let them keep doing it, and at some point they will stop and they'll look perfectly fine. This is where a table lift would come in mighty handy. I keep saying it, maybe one of these days. I was about to film getting this front exhaust on. You can see I've already got it kind of sitting on here, and I already got a dilemma. If you can look down there, you can see, I can do this without it falling off the head. We got the mount right here, and then we got this mount that we can use, and that one. Well, it doesn't line up at all. This is the correct bracket for this bike. These are the correct pipes that I ordered, but I think the common denominator here is these are just cheap pipes, let's be honest. So, not really sure what I'm going to do. The rear one does actually line up back here on that mount on the very back, so that I think will be okay. But you know, it doesn't surprise me that these don't fit right because they are cheap. But what I'm leaning towards, what I think I'm going to do, is I'm going to take a piece of flat bar, because we can actually find a way to bridge from here over to here. And I think that'll work. And the reason I do is what these things run on are these cheap little brackets that hang down. I've got some steel that's this thickness I could use, but I don't like it being this thin. So I think what I'm going to do, we're going to just scrap those and scrap the flat bar that I have. I'm going to get something wider and even beefier. I want to make sure that whatever's in here is kind of overkill, because I don't want somebody getting a bike with some kind of a Mickey Mouse bracket on there. But that kind of stinks because these are wrapped. I should have checked the alignment before I started wrapping the pipes, of course, so I can't return them. And I don't want to go all over creation trying to track down a bracket that may or may not work. So I'm going to give that some thought. So I'm going to move on to something else, start on this rear fender a little bit, and then we'll get right back to these exhausts once I figure out what the heck I'm going to do. But we'll move on to getting this rear fender mounted up, since our exhaust is kind of halting us right now. Now, we got our fender painted, of course, black, of course, and always rattle can on this channel. I actually have rattle can clear on it too, so it's nice and shiny. Now up here, what's going on up here, this cutout is so the seat would actually sit flush, kind of like as a, you know, to be able to recess down in there just a little bit. And all this is just a piece of rubber, got off of Scamazon, just to kind of mount over this to kind of help act as a mud flap to keep stuff from flying up. We'll just get this mounted up and then toss it on the bike. If I got the right tool, that would be helpful. All right, we'll throw it on the bike. And any trimming we need to do on this, we can do it once it's on the bike. Coming in hot. Well, I don't know if this towel is going to actually help hold this at all, but it sure makes me feel a little bit better. Oh boy. I think we're going to be, oh, I got to go forward. Which is a lot easier whenever it's just steel or primered. I think the towel actually is helping some. That's remarkable. Ooh, got one kind of started. There. I think we did it without scratching. There's another one. Oh, I hate doing this. Oh, I probably just scratched it. Can't have nice stuff. Get in there. What is the problem? There we are. As always, you get mad at it and it works. This paint, I think, matches back to the tanks in the front fender better than I thought. Why is this not fitting? Did I not get the right tool? No, I didn't get the right tool. Why would I do that? What in the world is it going on here? Take 75. Right. Well, that was easy. It helps when you've already mocked things up. So I made an executive decision. We are going to push forward to make those cheap pipes work. Now, I need to get some new tabs made for them to mount them up. Shouldn't be really that big of a deal. Now, the tabs that came with the pipes seem kind of flimsy, which, you know, doesn't shock me, right? Cheap pipes. They were also 1/8 inch steel. We're going to go with 1/4 inch, maybe a little overkill, but you know what? I'd rather be a little safe to make sure that they're mounted up pretty solid. Now, let's be honest, the right thing to do here, if your pipes aren't lining up right or if they're not the right pipes, is to replace them. But I'm going to be cheap, I'm going to be budget, and we're going to make those things work because I don't want to spend any extra money. got our pipe just lightly mounted up. Still got to get the gasket on it. But let's see. I want to make sure. Just want to make sure our pipe is going to be parallel to the bike itself. But the nice thing is there is some variability and some adjustability on these, the way these mount. Make us a mark here, I reckon. And can I get one on the bottom? Is it possible? Did I get it? I think I did. I think that'll work. Just like an engineer. Just kidding. Not making fun of you engineers. Well, I think the lesson here is if you're going to wrap your pipes, check to make sure they fit first. Especially if they're cheap garbage. I've had these things on like 5 or 6 times. Now suddenly they're not wanting to cooperate. Well, are we there yet? When you mount these up here, be careful at the heads. They're like, I think it's about 10 foot-pounds. I just do it by feel. You do not want to over-tighten these. Better to get a little bit of an exhaust leak and have to tighten it up a little bit. Well, I was not expecting to do this much work on these pipes. Just got to be honest. Why is it when I go to put stuff on camera, it looks like I've never done it before? I'll get on the stud, for goodness sakes. Take 35 of 70. What is the freaking malfunction here? There it is. See, get mad every time. Yeah, I'm learning. You just get a little angry with this stuff and it magically goes on. Actually, I don't recommend that. Don't get angry. I do believe on this one that we're going to be able to use the factory or the original or the mount tab that was on the other pipes that were on it, along with a spacer, because the mount tabs that came with these pipes are absolutely worthless. I do believe this is going to work. Remember, don't over tighten these. Always retighten them. Well, that didn't really go to plan, but I guess in fairness, we did get our pipes mounted up. So if you're looking for some cheap option pipes, if you get these, just know there's a good chance you're going to have to do a little bit of modifications. Now, this is not uncommon. I'm going to be honest. When you buy cheap aftermarket stuff, I don't care what it is, You're almost always going to have to do some spacing or shimming or stuff like that. I mean, back here on this one, even using one of the factory mounts, we had to do a little spacing. And that wasn't a big deal. That actually mounted up really good. But of course, our problem was that down there. But in fairness to Lowbrow, who I got these from, will I buy these again? Probably not. But they do say in the description that some custom fitment may be required, because basically they're calling out that they're cheap. So kudos to them for doing that. Now this bracket up here, I'm going to pop it off and just give it a little, high temp rattle can. I might actually put it in the vise a little bit and try to bend it if it's possible. Not my vise. I got a buddy that's got one that's much bigger. The reason is this pipe is it's just coming out just a little bit of a hair. And if I could just get it to go in a little bit, I think that would help. But you know what? It's not a big deal if I can't. I still think we succeeded, and I think it looks pretty good for what we were going for. And this should be our last thing to bolt on the bike. At least I think so. This was also probably the nicest looking thing that came off of this bike. And there she is, down on the ground. I think we got just about everything on her. Looking pretty sharp. Well, I still got to get a mirror on there, but I can do that later. Not a big deal, just little details. Really liking it though. Now on this fender, the way it mounted up, I never showed you guys this. Here's that piece of rubber I was talking about. It actually worked out pretty good. So you can see the whole purpose of this is just, it allows that seat to sit in a little bit more, and then it just covers all that up. But overall with the fender, if you go back to some of the earlier episodes, I wasn't too big on it. I think I kind of like it now. The reason I like it is just it's mounted so solid. It's perfectly centered. I just think it came out great. It's not perfect. It's not, I'd like to do a few different things with it, but it definitely gives me some cool ideas for the future. So I'm glad I tried it. Now, as I've said before, there is no way that black paint is going to match this paint up here. One thing you can't see in this garage is there is like a dark, let's call it like a burgundy metallic in that paint. When you get it in the sunlight, you can see it. So when you get this sucker in the sun, there's going to be a difference. But you know what? I still like it. I'm glad we tried it. The cool thing with this is if somebody wanted to try to track down, I'm sure you could probably find that factory paint. Rattle can this, throw you some clear. It'd make it look a little bit better. Or, you can easily convert it back to stock because nothing was chopped up. But overall, happy with the fender. I do like the looks on these pipes, how they turned out. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with just the standard drag pipe shape. And of course, I like the wrap. I'm a big fan of wrap, as you can tell. There's probably going to be a lot more of that on the channel. But that's where the love ends on these pipes. Personally, I think they kind of belong in the trash just because of how that one on the front down there is mounting. But I think what I want to do is we're going to try to get her fired off. If I can get the bike to where it'll actually, run decent enough, I think I might try to fix that before I take it for a ride. I got an idea for it. And it shouldn't take too long. It'll just maybe make me sleep a little better at night. But let's stop talking and see if it'll make some noise. So we actually got our drain pan down underneath the bike. The reason is there's probably still some old oil in the bottom of this crankcase. Now we did run our line, of course, down to the bottom, so it's only going to go down into the pan. But just in case, I imagine some's going to come out. Also, I did crank the bike over. Didn't film it. Probably should have. With the plugs pulled. You can see we got our cheapo Amazon gauge back on there. And it's reading oil pressure. It was building up, so I'm happy with that. This gauge is probably going to leak again. I put a lot of Teflon tape on it, but if it does, just going to yank it out and figure something out, but it's not a huge deal. Okay, let's see how long this is going to take. Well, that was a good start, literally. So you can probably see some smoke coming off. Everything on this bike is going to smoke. The paint, well, I hope that paint holds up. The paint and the wrap is going to smoke. So what I'm going to do, well, first of all, I'm not going to try to talk while these bikes are running. My mics suck. Maybe one day I'll get some better microphones, but it just doesn't work out well. So I'm going to check a lot of things over, check my oil lines, gas lines, check oil level and all that. Then I'm going to roll her outside and just let it kind of cook a while and see if I can't bake some of this stuff off. But so far, no smoke. Everything sounds good. The ticking noise that I did hear before on the bike is gone. So I think we got that adjusted with our push rods. Maybe. I don't know. Something did it. So, but that's good. Well, we let her run outside for, goodness, like 15 to 20 minutes, actually longer than I expected. The pipes were still cooking a little bit on the wrap, so it's going to continue to do that. But so far, so good on the engine. I didn't get any leaking from the rocker boxes, nothing from the engine so far. Let's definitely keep our fingers crossed that the engine doesn't leak. Oil lines, gas lines seem okay. The motor itself seems pretty quiet, especially for being a bike this old that's probably got some high miles on it. If you remember before, there was a ticking sound. The ticking sound now seems to me like it's gone, which was probably just adjusting those push rods. But what I did do, if you remember, if you watched the earlier episodes, I did go in here and tighten up this chain just a little bit. Now she's worrying on me, so I got to go in there and back that off. I'll do that later on. It's not a huge deal right now, but something that, something I know that I can fix that it shouldn't do for the person that buys it. Now for these pipes, I am going to start on these now. I am going to go in. I've decided, since the motor's doing so good, I'm going to go in and replace that bracket. That right there will work, but the truth is, since it is at an angle, kind of like this, if you were to put pressure on that pipe, it will go down. So I don't want that. The more I thought of it after the fact, I'm like, nah, I'm going to try to fix that. So I'm going to start on that now. I'm not going to film much of it at all, and once we get that done, we'll get her out on the road. Good news on our exhaust pipe. We got it mounted up better. I think now I can show you guys just what was going on with it. I can get down here on the ground. You can see here, we got this 1/4-inch bar right there that I installed. This mount bracket right here was actually, I'm going to call it the factory one. It was one that was on there before. It's also 1/4-inch, so it's pretty beefy. The problem was, this is a mount point, and that's a mount point on the factory mount. This is where this pipe's wanting to mount up. So there's nowhere really to go with it. I mean, this bracket that's on it, that's on the bike, might be wrong, but those things are pretty expensive, so I wasn't about to do all that. So what I did is I just basically bolted this here, and it's very solid, and it gave me a really nice point right here to bolt up to. So much happier with that. Again, it's not perfect, but I can definitely sleep at night knowing that that sucker's not going to go anywhere. At least I hope it doesn't. And over on this side, we've got some not so great news. So obviously I've got the gas tank off. So when I was running the bike, everything was doing really good. I noticed on the underside of the tank, there was some oil, which was odd. I'm like, how in the heck is there oil underneath the gas tank? And I started running my hands up in here whenever it was running and all that fun stuff. And I could literally feel air from the motor, that's right, coming up through here. So I thought, well, maybe I just didn't get this tight enough, whatever. So pulled the tank and started looking at it. And unfortunately, right in through here, the cover's cracked. Now, before I start throwing stones at whoever worked on this bike before, I could have been the one to crack that cover, so I have no idea. So that kind of stinks, but the best way to fix that, of course, is a new cover. I'm just going to order the new top piece right here. Going to get one on the way. That is going to delay us a little bit, but you know what? We want to get it right. So once I get that in and get that mounted back up, we're going to get this thing out on the road. And just like that, we are back. I think we got our rocker box fixed. Well, I hope we got it fixed. We'll find out here momentarily. So now we're going to roll this thing out, fire it up, and see if we can't limp it around the block a little bit. Well, ladies and gents, I think I might be a little impressed with this one. Our goal on this channel is always two things. Can we get it back on the road, and can we get it looking better? And I think we achieved that perfectly. Now, one thing to remember, this is still a 36-year-old motorcycle. And when we got this bike, she was in pretty rough shape. You're going to go back to some of the earlier videos on this one. You can go see just how bad she was. But we definitely got her looking better. But, you know, there's going to be some imperfections here and there, let's be honest. But this is definitely something I think somebody will be happy to just kind of blast around town on. And for our test drive, it actually went so good that there's really not a whole lot to talk about. Well, other than me forgetting to put a mirror on it earlier, but I got that on there now. But yeah, it shifted great. All 5 gears, butter smooth, went down the road perfectly straight. Even the carburetor, I didn't even have to do any tinkering on that. But basically, she rode like you would expect out of an old EVO SOFTAIL. So if you guys saw some of the earlier videos on this, you know that the engine was leaking pretty bad, so we did put a top-end gasket kit on it, and so far, everything's good to go. Base gaskets, head gaskets, and rocker boxes, not leaking. Everything looks great. Primary cover gaskets also not leaking. And if you remember, even on our little oil pressure gauge right there that was puking oil in the first video, we actually got it to stop. So a question I know somebody's going to ask is, how much did you spend on this bike, or how much did you invest in it? Great question. I think we're right at $2,100. Now, $2,100 is, honestly, it's more than I ever wanted to spend on one of these old bikes. But this bike was in pretty rough shape. I mean, we spent quite a bit just fixing things that were either leaking or mechanically wrong with it. Plus, you got to remember, we did things like a bar swap. We did the rear fender. We did the pipes. We did the breather. I mean, yeah, everything we did was budget, but it still adds up. So again, I don't like spending that much money, but it's kind of hard to argue the results. I think it turned out pretty good. So a few things on this bike that I would change, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Starting back here with a fender, originally I probably would have said I would change the fender. I actually like it. It's actually growing on me. I know some of you aren't going to like it because it is different. It might be weird to some people, but you know what? I'm glad we gave it a shot and did it. And the cool part is we didn't have to do any cutting on the bike. Now the tires, I didn't know that white walls were going to be such a divisive topic for some people. I got some comments about them. That's okay. We all have opinions. One comment had some profanity in it. So I guess some people really hate on white walls. But for me, it isn't the looks as much as it is, well, it's sort of the looks. If you get down there, there's already dirt on that thing. And we just went around the block. And that's really the problem. They just get really, really dirty. But still a really cool look. Now for the pipes that I was hating on so much, I do like how they look. I love the wrap. I love the sound. By the way, I'm a big fan of pipe wrap, so expect more of that on the channel. But of course, it was the mounting up. But I don't know if this bracket is factory or not. I'm sure if it's not, somebody will call it out. I hope you do. But we were able to make it work. But what I would change on them is inside. I would put either some really small baffles, or you do that trick where you take a washer and weld it to the end of a bolt. I've done that before. It actually works very, very well. Now, it's not a replacement for, a quality exhaust or anything like that. But what it does, it helps with that flat spot just a little bit. But mostly, it gets rid of that obnoxious growl that you get when you let off the exhaust. That growl is kind of cool at first when you first start riding these bikes. But, man, after a while, it just gets really irritating. That brings us to the engine. Now, the engine looks great. It turned out good. There's no leaks. I'm so happy it's not leaking, by the way. But look at that thing. Remember how bad that was before? Hard to argue with those results. But for me, if I'm going to tear into the engine like that and it's going to be my bike, probably going to do at a minimum, I'm going to do some head work, higher compression pistons, new rings, basically upgrade the top end. And then get down in that cam cover and see if we need to replace the cam bearing or the breather gear. Just go through it, a little bit better. But the problem with that is, of course, is money, right? You end up spending, gosh, what? Another $1,500 to $2,000 to do all that stuff right. And then now you're starting to kind of get away from the whole idea of being budget. But overall, it's really hard to argue with these results. I'm actually kind of impressed with this one. I would personally still ride this bike as is, even with those things I called out. And I think this thing is going to make a great ride for someone. Well, ladies and gents, we finally made it to the end on this old 89 Softail. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I thank you so much for those of you that watched all the videos in this series. For me, I learned a lot on this bike. I don't care how many bikes you get into and how many you work on. There's always going to be something new you're going to learn. That's the great thing about them. But we got future projects on the way. We've already got another bike in the garage that we're going to be working on. Hopefully, we'll get that first video out in 2 weeks. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and you'll catch those videos. And as always, I thank you guys so much for watching. We'll chat with you next time.